Hey there, friends and enemies, Joper here again, and today I'm bringing you the very first episode of my new podcast, the Weekly Lootdrop. This is where I'm going to go over everything in the looter space of video games from Destiny to Diablo and everything in between. So, thank you so much for tuning in, stopping by, and hanging out. I very much appreciate it. But I'm just going to jump right into it because the looter space is very interesting right now, and I thought it was the perfect time to go over everything. We have Destiny 2 in a bit of a lull. It was been the king of the looter shooter for so long, absolutely dominant. The player base is huge, but it's seen a bit of a trend downwards, and I know a lot of people are frustrated with the state of the game. I personally am comfortable with the fact that it's going to be what it is until we hit the final shape, and then things are going to change dramatically, in my personal opinion. As far as the structure of content we're getting, maybe a change from the traditional expansion plus seasonal model that we're getting right now. And yeah, I think you have to understand that they've been building towards this for so long. They want to make sure that everybody on PS4, everyone on Xbox One, gets to experience the end of the saga that they've been kind of hinting at. And so that's why I don't think a lot is going to change with their model, with the storytelling, anything like that. We know what Destiny 2 is going to be until after that. I personally feel like we need to see Destiny 2 evolve. I love dungeons and I love raids, and the fact that we get those as endgame is fantastic. I just think we need a change in the way we approach endgame in Destiny 2. Whether that is a new PvEVP mode, whether it's survival type, whether it's open world like the Dark Zone from the Division or something like that, whatever the case may be, I think we need an evolution of that and an evolution of endgame with leaderboards. For example, a horde mode. Maybe you can go 100 rounds with leaderboards on timing and score and all that kind of good stuff. Anything like that would be a nice evolution and something different from what we have in the game, because there's got to be a place to test your skill, your builds, and your fun factor, and also get rewarded for doing so. Maybe emblems at certain ranks, glows at certain ranks, armor ornaments at certain ranks, whatever the case may be. I feel like that's something that needs to happen within Destiny 2, and can only happen after the final shape, once we've experienced the end of the story, and Bungie can move on past the current model, move past being able to just focus on everybody that currently is experiencing the game, move on to the current generation of consoles, move on to advancing technology with the PvP or PC players, and kind of move past some of the issues. We also need probably a gap in time, and not everyone's going to like to hear this, when we get Destiny content. Say we don't get an expansion for a year. I think that's important in order to allow Destiny to evolve, because right now we're just getting content after content after content, and what that's leading to is a staleness of the game, in my opinion, and we need a break from the game. Maybe we get their new game Matter from Bungie, which will siphon off some of the player base. Maybe we just get a delay for a year in the next expansion before we move forward. Maybe we don't get past or current seasons or new seasons for a little bit. We get past seasons and just like a best of year of Destiny. I don't know. I know that won't bring in the same funds that Bungie has brought in for the last couple of years, but I think it's absolutely necessary in order to move the game forward. We need the Bungie of old that was so innovative and allowed us to experience so many new things in video games that we'd never seen. We've never seen a first person shooter with a raid before. We didn't have such great gunplay carryover across PvE and PvP content. We haven't seen anything like Gambit, even though it wasn't as successful as they would have wanted it to be. It still was something new, and not everything you try that's new is going to work out, but it's important to keep moving forward, and that's what I want from Bungie more than anything, and I hope we get that in the future. That leads me into the Duviri Paradox, which is the brand new Warframe expansion that just dropped this week, and it's a lot of fun. It's something that I think Bungie could learn from as well, and other games also, because same thing with the Descent mode coming into Division 2. both the Deviri Paradox and the Descent mode are going to be accessible for new players as well as returning players. I think that's absolutely vital in these types of games that can also almost feel overwhelming at times for new players coming in. Everyone has got all their gear, they've got all this cool stuff, their experience with the story, with the gameplay, and all that kind of stuff. And you want a fun new experience that is able to be played right from the very beginning for players who are new. The one thing that kind of frustrated me a little bit with the Warframe expansion is there's no way to start over in this game, especially as somebody who's playing on console. I couldn't just start a new character, start with the Deviri Paradox. I had played in the past. I had only gotten to like the 6th tier rank or whatever that is, so I wasn't able to really experience the end game or move forward as much as I would have liked in Warframe in the past. And I wanted that fresh start to really suck me into the game. Unfortunately, I couldn't do it. I could still play the Deviri Paradox right at the beginning of my playtime. So that's fine, but I just wanted a fresh start, and that's just a minor quibble. I think I'm probably in the minority, so I understand why they wouldn't have something like that in the game, because not a lot of people are going to be looking to do that. But I just, much like in Destiny, where if I wanted to, I could just start a fresh character. I would love for something like that within Warframe in the future, personally. But Warframe, by all accounts, keeps chugging along, is in a good spot, and I think is a game a lot of people should check out, and is a nice addition to have. Like, say you're a Destiny fan and you want a game that is also a looter shooter to play in your downtime. Warframe is a perfect example of that. I've played all of the looter shooters in the past, everything from Outriders and Borderlands and Diablo, not Diablo as a looter shooter, but Outriders, Borderlands, Destiny, Anthem, Marvel's Avengers, all of these games that are very much different. I've played all of them. And so I like having multiple different options as looter shooters available, and knowing that Warframe continues to chug along and be an option. Fallout 76 is significantly better than it was when it first dropped. It just is great, and I love it, and I'm glad that we have those options. That goal leads me back to the Division 2 and the new Descent mode, which looks very cool. Roguelike gameplay where you jump in, you get to pick a couple pieces of loot. You're going to level up that system and have better gear each time you jump in, as long as you're making progress. And it sounds like a new take on their survival mode from the original Division, which I very much enjoyed, and set the Division apart from other games, because there was this option to play that even if I didn't want to play the main game and have all my gear leveled up, I could jump into that, still have success, and earn gear for my main account. And that's something that Descent mode is going to have as well. And the Division 2 was a game that I thought was Left 4 Dead at one point. There was long stretches of time with no content, no new content. We had repeated seasons, which was a bit of a problem. A lot of community unrest with how they were handling things. The Dark Zone not being nearly what it was in Division 1. And all that led me to believe that this game was just kind of a lost cause. And maybe they would move on to Division 3. Maybe they would just focus on the Division Heartland, which is coming out soon. And they would leave the Division 2 in the past. But I'm glad they haven't, because there's still a lot of potential for this game. And I think in order to make a Division 3 or make the Division 2 reborn, like you've seen with like Final Fantasy XIV, A Realm Reborn, in order to do something like that, you need this game to be rejuvenated first and get the people excited to play the Division again. And hopefully the Descent mode lives up to that expectation, as the Deviri Paradox has for Warframe players. Gotten people back engaged, gotten people excited to jump into the game again, and experience everything else that they've done over the course of time to improve the game. That's something that I think people often forget and don't think about, is these games improve still slowly but steadily. There's quality of life improvements. There's additional weapon types. There's all kinds of different stuff to check out. And in order to maximize your enjoyment of the game, as you're playing day to day, you miss out on a lot of stuff. You're like, oh yeah, this was cool, this was nice. But then you go back and you are a lapsed player and you come back to the game after a long period of time, now all of a sudden you're like, wow, this game has improved night and day compared to where it once was. You'll just be overwhelmed with all the new content if you're not careful. So that's where having these pieces of content that are newer be available to new players, absolutely vital in my personal opinion. It's something I wish Destiny did more of, allowed access to some of these different pieces of content right from the rip in order to get players excited once again. We've got other looter shooter news as well. Obviously, with the Borderlands movie coming out, I think that's going to be a time where they'll probably announce Borderlands 4 sometime coinciding with that. That would make the most sense in order to build the hype. We've seen it with past games, right? We saw Cyberpunk Edge Runners come out, and Cyberpunk 2077 absolutely blew up, right? It was super popular when that happened. That is something. The Witcher show came out and absolutely blew up the Witcher 3 sales and got a lot of people invested. So I think that's the time where you'd want to have those two kind of sync up together. We also had a mod drop for Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, which was called Wonderlands Redux. And it's apparently, by all accounts, an absolute game changer. I haven't had a chance to play it myself. Tiny Tina's Wonderlands was a game that I felt like had so much potential and also showed how dated the Borderlands model is, right? The save quitting is just a thing of the past, in my opinion. There's got to be a better option for that in order to farm bosses and stuff. The DLC model that they had in Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, with the content felt the same. You're going to grind up levels of the chaos in the chaos mode. After one character, I had no incentive or no desire to do a second character. And I wanted to make builds. I wanted to do multiple characters. I wanted to test all my playthroughs and stuff. And there was just no desire there because I was farming for gear to use in the same content that I was previously playing already. So there was nothing new for me to look forward to, nowhere new for me to use my gear in. And I wasn't able to, even in the DLC game modes, farm chaos levels within those new game modes in order to level up and get new gear and stuff like that. It just felt so redundant to me and just not really something that I was looking forward to. I really enjoyed the base campaign of Wonderlands. I enjoyed the characters and a lot of stuff. So now knowing that Wonderlands Redux has Pearlescence as a new gear type, like escalating gear levels. So there's just a lot of quality of life changes, things that I wish would have been in Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. And I really hope that going forward, Gearbox looks at some of the feedback and looks at the beginning of Tiny Tina's Wonderlands and then how it fell off through the DLCs and understands that that model is just not going to work in the future and they need to adjust things some way, somehow. I'm not saying it has to be live service. I think a lot of people in the Borderlands community get frustrated when you talk about transition to a live service model, and I don't think that's necessary. I don't think you actually have to do that. I think in the future, what would be more important is having a model that is sustainable over the course of time, like with these DLC type drops, but that the content is escalating end game things. So when I have a new DLC on the horizon, I know I'm going to be able to use my gear, level up my character, and get new gear in those new modes, and I don't have to resort to going back and playing the old modes that I've already been playing for a month or two before the DLC even dropped. So that's just a personal opinion of mine. Ongoing events, like if you have a different event weekly, again, doesn't have to be live service, just have weekly events like we've seen in Borderlands 3. Those should be also in the game, in my personal opinion, and having some kind of raids, takedowns, all of that stuff is also very, very important for the long-term health of these games. That's it for me on Borderlands, because I love that game. I can't wait for the Borderlands 4, Tiny Tina's Wonderlands 2. Wonderlands was a very successful game off the rip, and I hope for the best in that franchise, because that's another one that when everything is going right, I'm fully invested in the franchise and I'm playing it a ton. I've beaten every single one of those games. I've had multiple characters across all of those games, and I've really enjoyed my playthrough. So I would love for that game to be one that I play and come back to quite consistently. Then we've also got some other looter shooter news. Synced is kind of a weird quasi looter shooter MMO type game, really focused on the PvP aspect. You play PvE in order to get better gear. You get your companion character that you use in PvP, and you can use those. You basically earn and use those and then transition them to a PvPvE mode, I think it is. And having played the beta, I think the game is a lot of fun. It definitely needed some work, but we did learn that the game is fully launching in the summer, which is very exciting and something that I am really ready to see how that game performs over the course of time because like I said, having multiple options in the space is good. I enjoy PvP modes in looter shooters, whether it's the Dark Zone from Division 1, whether it's Destiny 2's PvP or Gambit. I have my Reckoner title in Destiny 2 for Gambit, which not a lot of people have because I enjoy the game mode so much. And so I would love for this to be highly successful. I'm still on the fence about it after having played the beta because I think there's a lot of room for improvement with the game. But it is going to be free to play, and that's something that's exciting because hopefully, if it is something like Warframe, a game that starts out solid but improves over time, this could end up being one of the better games in the genre. Same thing with something like The First Descendant, which we don't have a release date on, but they continue to tease the game on social media, and that's very exciting because there's just a lot of potential. That Arc Raiders is another one that is supposed to launch in 2023, and ultimately, I just want more competition in the space for all these games to be as good as possible, so that way, not everyone is going to be a banger. I know that for sure, but I want as many of them as possible to be successful, so that way I have options when I sit down and play, and I'm like, okay, this is the only looter shooter available. Destiny has been that for so long. I just want there to be other options. Now, outside of just the looter shooters, we also have competitions in the top-down ARPG looter space. Diablo 4 is dropping in just a little over a month now, and we do have another beta upcoming, which they announced, and you have rewards you can earn from playing the beta. And this game, in my opinion, is going to blow the charts away. It's going to be absolutely one of the most purchased and played games of the year. That's just I think there's that much hype behind it right now. There's a chance that it might be have some issues at launch. I want to be surprised by that, whether there's server issues, whether the bugs and glitches and all that stuff. But ultimately, there's enough there behind the game and with everything they've announced with the different characters and the end game and all that stuff that I think this game is going to be one that a lot of people are playing for a long time. We've got seasons we know are coming as well. And this might be the place to look for the most popular looter in the game. So that leads me into kind of like a side transition almost, where I talk about the difference between looters and MMOs. Looters are ones you can primarily pretty much play everything solo. Your main key is acquiring new loot to take into new pieces of content, but you're not really doing raids and dungeons that are mandatory playing with other players. There's really not going to be any types of things. Like the only difference in Diablo 4 is going to be obviously the world bosses are going to require you to play with other players, but that's not a lot of content or not the end goal or end game. You can play those you can beat those world bosses if you want to, but they're not really the focus of the game. The focus of the game is acquiring new loot, leveling up your builds, and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, Destiny has raids and all that, so that's kind of interesting, but it is still more of a looter shooter than a traditional MMO. And it's a fine line. I will say that. And if there's any looters that you enjoy and they're arguing over whether it's a looter or an MMO, I think is semantics at the end of the day. And ultimately, I want as many of these games as possible. Like, there's a lot of MMO games that are not considered looters necessarily that I would still lump in this category that I'm very excited about. For example, there's a game Wayfinder that looks really, really cool. There's also like Blue Protocol, which is more traditional MMO, but it's more of an action RPG than a top-down MMO as well. There's just a lot of options in the space, and I'm really excited about the future of looters in general. You might see me cover MMOs on this podcast. You might see me talk about Wayfinder as a game that I'm very, very excited about. It's one of my most anticipated games of the year. It is entering early access in the summer. We have another closed beta coming up for that one in May. But that leads me back to Diablo 4. Again, I know I go on tangents a lot, and that's just the way it's going to be on this podcast. If you're listening, remember, I'm just going to go on tangents. It's the way it is. But yeah, Diablo 4 is probably one of my more anticipated games of the year. It's a perfect time in June, too. The new season of Destiny will have arrived, but there's going to be a gap there, and then I'm going to dive in headlong into Diablo and farm that game to no end. Again, Synced is supposed to be coming this summer. Wayfinder is coming this summer. It is a very good time to be a fan of looters in general, and I'm excited to talk about them each and every week with you guys going forward. I cannot wait. I think it's going to be a great time. I feel like this podcast is going to evolve as well, so stay tuned for that. I'm going to have guests on as we talk about various games, experts in whatever game they're playing, whether it's from Destiny, Diablo, whatever the case may be. I'm going to talk about launches and new items and release dates and all that stuff. Dive into everything going on that week as it comes. You can expect this every single Monday going forward. For sure, keep that in mind. Mark it down on your calendar. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the weekly loot drop. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe on whatever platform you're on. Leave a recommendation if you do as well. I know it helps out a lot with the algorithm, so definitely thank you all for that. My name is Jopa. I hope you enjoyed the podcast, and I'll catch you all later.